3 hours. After 3 hours, I felt a tingle in my head, went all the way down to my toes, came back, and it resonated in my heart space. I started bawling. I woke my mum up and I'm like, I've been saved.
Welcome to season 1 of Beyond the Human. Remember who you are. I'm your host, Hazel Ray, singer-songwriter, experiencer, and messenger for those walking the edge of remembrance just like me. This is not a podcast to convince you of anything. Really, just take what resonates, leave what doesn't. This is a transmission, a call to the ones waking up, the ones remembering, the starseeds, the sensitives, the truth seekers, bridging science and spirit. If you're listening to this, you are ready. So let's remember together.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Human. I am your host, Hazel Ray, and today we are talking about psychic attacks and things that we can do to protect ourselves. Really, firstly, I want to start back to my story, what was sort of happening to me, which might actually reflect some things that are happening to some of you guys, and then understand the journey of how I've understood potentially what that could mean, and then therefore how we can protect ourselves from those things, how we can transcend some of the psychic attacks that can happen. So this sort of episode does come with a trigger warning, because for some of you, what I am going to explain were very real experiences for me, and for some people out there, they're very real experiences for them too. And I suppose what I really want to do is help other people feel seen and understood, I suppose, and not alone, because I can tell you now, in my experiences and what I've gone through, there are times when I feel really alone and really misunderstood. So my first sort of introduction to the spiritual realm is my first memories of seeing entities in my bedroom as a young kid. So I used to get my dad to come in and sit with me, and I would see these shadow figures in the hallway, and they were sort of like walking up and back and up and back, and I would run to the door and look down the hallway and there'd be no one there. And I found that really quite alarming, and so I would get my dad up, and I'd also hear like newspapers flicking, light switches, and I would ask him if he could see these shadow people when I could start to see them, and he couldn't. And that was sort of my first introduction of understanding that there are things that I could see in this world that other people couldn't, and I didn't see it as a gift. I saw it that there was something wrong with me, and I was scared of them. These shadow figures then became intrusive in my thoughts. So my dad sometimes would lie with me, and I'd be scared to go to sleep, and I would ask him, what can I do to help me go to sleep? And he would say, think of happy thoughts or whatever. And so I'm trying to dream of like playing on a playground, for instance, and then these shadow figures would intrusively come into my vision, and I couldn't control them. And I'd say, yeah, but they keep coming in, and Dad didn't really understand. And so I would be very, very scared at night time to go to bed. And the only thing that helped was having the television on. And my parents now understand why that happened, and I probably even understand on a scientific level now why I needed the television on so badly. But yeah, I used to sort of argue with my mum and dad if they were going to be going to bed before me, that I needed the television on. I needed that interference. Fast forward to, that was probably when I was around 7. So when I was 9, my mum and dad split up, and I was exposed to some domestic violence. I also was being bullied at primary school at the time, and at 10 I was a gymnast, and unfortunately my gymnastics coach was a sexual abuser. So all the places that I would spend all my time, were quite unsafe. I felt really unsafe in the world, and to be honest with you, I'd wake up in the morning as a little girl and I would just dread the nighttime, because I knew what was coming for me. I remember getting out of the shower distinctly one morning, and I heard a voice in my head, and it said, if you don't touch that doorknob 3 times, you're going to have a bad day today. So I went over and I touched the doorknob 3 times and I went on with my day. And this voice kept coming in and it would say, if you don't skip that step, your mum's going to die. Or if you don't, I remember this one time, if you don't jump out of the car and run and touch this blade of grass, your dad's going to die. And it just had control over me, and I would do all these things to sort of control the voice and control my reality. Now this voice stayed with me all right up until I was 32, when I had my mass awakening. I don't have that familiar dark voice in my head, and what was really interesting about it is it always spoke in like the second person you. It was never I. It was always a you telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that. In my 20s, the voice told me that I should stop eating and count my calories, and I was only allowed to have 400 calories a day, and I had to be in a deficit, so I had to burn the same amount. And this voice was the only thing I sort of spent time with. I would work every day as a teacher. I'd just become a secondary school teacher, and then I'd go home on my own. And sadly, I became a bulimic, and I was suffering with that for a couple of years. I got some psych help and a dietitian, and we came out the other side of that using Western medicine, of just having therapy. When I say I survived it, the voice was still there telling me that I'm not good enough and that I won't amount to anything, and sort of kept me caged in the reality that I was in. When I had my first son, I remember going to a mother's group, and there was the lady off Studio 10, and she was telling her story of having postnatal anxiety, and part of that was having intrusive visions of harming her child, or intrusive visions of her child being harmed from objects in the house. And I heard a voice, and it said, that's going to happen to you. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, I started having visions of any object in the house, actually how it would impale or harm my child. It was so disturbing, and I remember having so much shame and guilt around this happening. So a psychologist sent me to a psychiatrist, and because I'd studied neuroscience, I sort of sat there and I looked at her and I'm like, I know I'm sleep deprived, and I know my neurotransmitters are completely imbalanced in my brain. I don't know how to stop it. And she looked at me and she was like, you need to go home and you need to have a big sleep. And I'm like, I don't know how that's possible. I'm petrified. So we went home. No one was allowed to stay over, and I had to just continue to go to sleep and wake up every day and just pray that didn't become my reality. And it didn't. I went and saw a psychologist, and we used some vision changing techniques where I would change the thoughts into cartoons and make them funny and remind myself that I was in control. And again, it worked. So again, I see this voice that was with me from when I was 10. It transferred into the eating disorder. It transferred into intrusive visions. And then after I had my second son, it became a full-blown attack, and which is what led me to my complete awakening, which was facing the thing I was the most scared of, which were these voices, or becoming crazy and being attacked or taken. I'd seen horror movies as a kid, and I felt like I was in one. So I want to share the last part of this story, and I want you to just sort of do something for me now. I want you to make this little symbol. So if you're listening and you're not watching, just put your pointer finger connected with your thumb. It makes a closed circuit, and it's an intentional energy blocker. So when I share this story, if you want to continue to listen, that you don't open up some sort of fear portal or allow what I'm sharing to have any sort of influence on you. That's one way to protect yourself, and it's really important. But I want to share this story because it is kind of otherworldly, and to know now that I sit here face to face with you on this podcast, completely sane, and I don't take any medication, and I never have, for my mental health. All I have now is the pure understanding of how all this potentially works, why it happens, and how we can protect ourselves from it. And potentially that's the gift of why it happened. So after I'd had my second son, he was probably around, he would have been about 3 months old, nearly 4 months old. And my eldest son was 2. And he started to tell me about these dark shadows that he could see in his room. And my whole fear center went off. I was so scared that my son was going to then live a fearful existence like I had. Because I want to explain to you, when I was young, the fear of the dark didn't end. My ex-husband would even be able to tell you that when he would go away and wouldn't be here for a night, I'd have to go stay at my mum's house. I couldn't sleep on my own. I didn't want to be in a bed with my own energy on my own. I was too petrified. All through high school, I had to be the one that slept in the middle or the one closest to the wall. Just extremely fearful of the night. So when my son was showing these signs, I don't want that life for him. And I'd used Western medicine so much, like as in going to psychologists and speaking to them about trying to fix what was going on with me. But I didn't want to be medicated. And they'd never suggested it, believe it or not. But I didn't want to take any anti-anxiety pills or anything like that, because I kept hearing, if you were going to take that stuff, you will never get off it. So I decided, I had a friend who had said to me that she knew this dark healer. And she suggested that I give her a call. Well, it got worse before I did that. It was so much so that my son was telling me he was being pinched. He was getting pinched in his bed. Things were hurting him. I had my ex-husband was asleep one night in this time. And he actually rolled over, opened his eyes and went, ha 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 ha. Closed his eyes and went back to sleep. While I was lying there going, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. These kind of things just petrified me and kept me so locked in fear. And fear is a very low vibration. So when you're in fear, you're just attracting more and more and more of these entities, experiences. So what sort of ended up happening is I went and saw my dark healer, my friend's dark healer, and she said to me, she was actually really surprised that I wasn't in a white suit, meaning she was very surprised that I was still here on earth. And she did a clearing on my boys. They ended up like releasing 3 times in the session each. And then she said, I'm going to clear your house. She's like, I can't do it till Friday. I said, okay. Waited a week, got to Friday, and I knew, I had this gut feeling that she wasn't going to be able to do it. She rang me and she said, they're not going to let me do it. And I heard in my head, this is your test. She said, you've just got to do whatever you can now to get through the next 3 days, because I'm allowed to open it up on Monday. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to get through until Monday. The voices were getting really loud and I was feeling really disoriented and disconnected with reality. I rang my dad because he was my safe place and asked if he would come and stay over, because I said, I'm starting to see the things that I saw as a kid again, and he understood the fear. So he came over and I slept next to my dad with my little baby. And when I say slept, I didn't really sleep. I was getting jolted awake every time I tried to fall asleep, and weird things was happening. So I asked to watch Lego Masters, and so I went to bed and I had Lego Masters on and I started to drift off. And do you know what I woke to? I woke to the word demon. And when I opened my eyes on Lego Masters, someone had built a demon on top of a house. And my whole body started shaking. I already knew what I was dealing with, but it's scary, because if you've seen horror movies or you understand anything about energy, if an energy force is dense enough, it's able to move things. Our phones are connected, their energy. They take in frequencies from all around give us information from the internet. So if everything is energy and everything outside of us is energy, it's all can be communicated with, all connected. The second night, my dad stayed again because I had 3 nights to get through. I walked into the lounge room this night and I visually saw a horned figure in my lounge room with a hunched over back, and it was all hairy and it had yellow eyes. And it disappeared. And I just decided in that moment, I started to hear thoughts of taking my own life because, you know, you start to have these thoughts. I think if anyone's ever been in chronic pain before, then you would understand this feeling. You start to have this thought. It's like, if this was going to be my life, I don't want to exist in this. I don't also want to put my children in danger. So I had visions of how I would take my own life. And so when the last night was coming that I had to get through, I didn't want to stay at my house because I was worried that I would then follow through with the visions that I had seen. So I asked to stay at my mum's house, and my ex-husband didn't understand like why I needed to stay there. For me, my mum was a little bit spiritual, and I knew I was going to need her help on this particular night. I'd spoken to my dark healer, and she just said, it's time, you know, it's time for you to become who you're meant to be. And I just said, I don't even know how I'm going to get through the night. So she's like, do things that try to bring you joy. But my heart chakra, I genuinely felt like someone was trying to rip me out of my chest. I went and got a Valium from my dad. It did nothing. I started to vomit because I felt so sick inside, which to me was like a purging. And I'd had enough of being awake. In fact, I felt so disorientated in my existence. I didn't even know if I was going to make it through the night. And I'd begged my mum to not take me to the hospital no matter what happens, because I don't want to be admitted, because if they were to put me on any drugs, I don't think I would ever leave there. So she promised me. She put me to bed, and I asked for Rebel Wilson's the grooming show that she did, Pooch Perfect. And I was lying there listening to that, sort of drifting in and out of consciousness. But every time any word that was to do with hell or demons, she was like cutting like a demon. She's going as fast as a bat out of hell. My whole body would jolt awake. And then I heard a voice outside of myself, proper, like a whisper in my ear, and it said, "They're coming." And I sat up, and in that moment, this is no word of a lie, my baby started screaming. My eldest child down the hall, who was sleeping with his dad, he pooed himself in his bed. Now, he would never poo himself in the night. This energy came gushing through the house. I turned to my mum and I'm like, "Mum, we need to put white light around us. Please put white light around us." I asked her for an iPad randomly. I'm just like trusting whatever came to me. And I typed in negative energy healing, and it came up with, I think, anyway, there was a frequency, and it had like a spiral in the middle. And basically I just was staring at this with this healing frequency, just staring at the middle of this circle. But all I could feel was like someone was trying to physically rip me out of my chest. And I put my baby on my breast because that would release oxytocin and dopamine. I was using all of the natural drugs that I could get. And yeah, 3 hours. I noticed that when I was sitting there staring at this dot, nothing had happened. I didn't go anywhere. They didn't start pulling me out of my bed, nothing. For 3 hours, after 3 hours, I felt a tingle in my head, went all the way down to my toes, came back, and it resonated in my heart space. I started bawling. And I woke my mum up and I'm like, "I've been saved. It's gone. I can't feel it." It was like someone had just like flicked off, like turned the television off, all the static noise that was around me that I didn't even know. Still my fingers. It was quiet. It was just so quiet all of a sudden. And yeah, it was one of the most profound feelings. I just knew that this was otherworldly and that it was going to potentially be life-changing. That day I had to go and see my healer. I said, "At whatever cost, Mum, you have to get me there." I was so depleted. I was so exhausted and so tired. She did healing on me, she cleared my house, and she said to me that I would be in like intensive care for 2 weeks, meaning that she said that the feelings will come on as if like the entities were around me again, but then the voices wouldn't come. And that's exactly what happened. I had a few attacks where I could feel my heart, like my fear just coming in, my heart chakra going off, and then it would dissipate and nothing would happen. I wouldn't hear anything. And after about 2 weeks, I remember getting out of the shower and I would stand in the mirror and I'd sometimes have like negative self-talk about my body, which I was used to. And I heard this voice and it says, "You're beautiful, you know, why?" And then the questions came, you know, why aren't you sharing your music with the world? Or why aren't you with someone that loves and appreciates you the way that you deserve to be? Why? Yeah, why? And I'm like, whoa. Within 2 months, I had left my husband, my town, my career, and I was just ready to trust, because the fact that I'd survived that, I honestly believe that right now, like I'm in this house on my own, I could go and sleep outside naked. I was like, let's go. Nothing can touch me. I can't even explain to you now how liberating it is to be able to sleep in a house by myself. I took myself away for the Conscious Life Festival up in Queensland. I drove a van and I was able to stay in the van on my own. I mean, I wasn't caged anymore. So that's what I mean by psychic attack. And it still does happen to me. Only a couple of days ago, I started to feel it comes over like a wave. I feel myself like drop. My heart chakra feels heavy, and then I'll get intrusive thoughts about we're coming for you, or you know, you haven't escaped us yet, or something like this. And it can be challenging. I have to just like let it sort of come in and out and not attach to it, and know that this too shall pass, this too shall pass. So those experiences have really pushed me to try and understand scientifically how I'm not crazy. And it's led me to so much interesting information, one of which I just sort of stumbled across earlier this year, and it's an ancient Egypt teaching. So the Eye of Horus in the Egyptian culture had different symbols to depict our senses, and it doesn't have 5 senses, it has 6. So the 6th sense is thought. They would teach that you would not only self-generate thought, but you would receive thought. And that's guidance, whether it be from the higher self or your ancestors or the angelic realms. Something that I want you to investigate for yourself is to just spend some time, whether it's in meditation or just actively listening to your thoughts. Are they you generated thoughts, or are they I generated thoughts? Are these thoughts nasty? Are they positive? Are they serving you? Because you are not your thoughts at all. And so many people listen to them and think that, oh, I'm not a good person, or they hear you're not a good person, and then it makes them feel low and get lower and lower and lower, and hold guilt and shame. And man, when I thought I was crazy, the amount of guilt and shame I felt around other people was just keeping me right in that low vibration. What I mean by that is this: every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's one of Newton's laws. And if you're pushing out a certain vibration, that is the vibration that you're attracting back to you. We are fractal antennas. Our DNA is able to conduct electricity in certain shapes. And if something can conduct electricity, it can receive a signal. So your phone has a fractal antenna, meaning it has lots of different antenna lengths. Okay, and that means it can receive lots of different frequencies of signal, of information. So we've got Wi-Fi, you've got the phone calls, you've got the text messages, you've got the location for it. It can receive all these different, like satellite. So that's the bandwidth. Our fractal antennas in us are the DNA in our cells. So when the Egyptians said that thought is a 6th sense, this is exactly how it works. When you hear, you have a sound wave that the cells in your ears can detect, change into chemical messages, and go into the temporal lobe and decode as sound and what you hear. But if the frequency is not in the bandwidth that you can receive, you won't hear it. It's the same with eyes. The light has a certain frequency. Your eyes have rods and cones. It decodes the light frequency. It puts it into chemical messages. The information goes along the optic nerve to your occipital lobe, and then you see vision. So what you're seeing and hearing and smelling and feeling are all chemicals, because they're being decoded into chemical messages and being changed into chemical messages, I should say, and decoded in the brain. And that's your reality. Like my bowl analogy, which I've given on my Instagram, that fact that we're vessels inside water, and the water is this clear material that is between us, the air, the atoms in the air, the particles. And in space, they've talked about dark matter and all these sorts of wonderful things that we don't necessarily know a lot about. But we're all connected in this giant web. And so the information so the frequency that our DNA cells can receive is really high frequency. How does that not then change into chemical messages in the brain as thought? Just like a radio station, just like a television, just like your phone. But you need to pay attention to what is you and what is I. You'll also hear theys and we's as well. And if it's not serving you, do not give it time. Allow it to pass through you. But the key to becoming autonomous from psychic attack is understanding when it's happening. And you can only understand when it's happening when you're listening to your thoughts. And are they in first, second, third person? If it's in first person and it's negative, there's inner work to do. If it's in second person and third person and it's not serving you, you can choose not to listen to it. But that's the first key. The second thing that you need to understand is for you to be receiving those messages, your vibration must be low. So those that drink alcohol can relate to this. If you drink alcohol, you wake up the next day and you're usually feeling quite sluggish and you might have quite negative thoughts. Alcohol lowers your vibrations, not to mention it's called spirits for a reason. And so your vibration is lower, meaning that the frequency is slower. And that's where all I would call demonic radio station. I like to think that when I was going through my awakening, I was on demonic 101. And then once I faced my fear, released the blockage, I raised my vibration, and then I'm able to listen to angelic 101. And things that we eat, the information that we're exposed to, so the television for one, if I could encourage you to do one thing, do 1 week without the television. If you're one of these people watching this, which I probably highly doubt that you do if you watch this, if you're watching or listening to this, I should say, you probably don't watch the news or listen to the radio. You see, a lot of the news is here to create fear, because fear is a low vibration. If you live in fear, then you're going to definitely be hearing a lot of those negative thoughts. You're on demonic 101 for sure. But if you can detach from that information, it doesn't have power in your mind, and you're not servicing this, I suppose, information box with things that can cause fear. Guilt and shame are other ones, so making sure that you've got people in your life that support you, that listen to you, that make you feel loved. So the highest vibration is gratitude. So that's why it's so important to be grateful for the things that you have. Meditate on it. Do journaling. And constantly releasing blockages. So that's why when people go on the spiritual path of enlightenment, no one's ever enlightened, but the enlightenment path, it's not easy. People aren't walking around going, it's all love and light. You've got to look in, and you've got to find, where are your blockages? Where are your fears? There's a reason why we say face your fears, live your dreams. Because when you face your fear, you remove a blockage of a doubt, of one of those thoughts that have come in and planted a seed to say that you will never amount to anything. You can't speak in front of an audience. You can't release a song. You're not good enough for that. And you've got to go, and you've got to go step into that. The fear, to me, is the guideposts to the gifts that you're here to receive and share with the world. So if anything that I can encourage for controlling psychic attacks, firstly, become aware of your thoughts. Who is speaking? Is it you or is it I? The second thing that you can do, watch the foods that you're eating and what you're drinking, because those two can interrupt the vibration of your body. If you have gut issues and you continue to eat the food that is upsetting your gut, it is going to lower your vibration, cause dis-ease in your body. So don't do that either. Third things you can do, some people like to go and get Reiki clearings or healings, or go and do some sort of somatic healing or breath work, and these are all great modalities of moving stuck energy. I just want you to be careful with those modalities. Go and learn them for sure, but don't give your power away to someone else. Okay, I said it again, don't give your power away to someone else, because I want you to know that every single human on this planet has the ability to see, hear, and feel just like I do, just like their healer does. Okay, so if anything, if you want to learn, you can learn to heal yourself. And healing yourself is usually facing the fears, the reason why you're there in the first place. But that requires work. And the fourth thing I should say, is this is my trick. It's a circuit blocker. When you close my hand, I've got a closed circuit of frequency. It also brings my attention that I'm protecting myself. I have a conscious effort right now that I'm aware by doing this that I'm not going to allow anything to permeate my auric field. So I hope today, from what I've shared, to those of you who have experienced potential attacks like I have, and I've had many more where technology has communicated and done weird things, but again, we have more episodes and more time for that. But today I just really wanted to share the understanding of the different frequency levels. So raise your vibration and get yourself out of that radio station. And find ways to do things that bring you joy and make you feel really grateful for life. Because if you're doing those things, then you're not going to be under psychic attack. But you also need to be aware when it's happening. So please listen to your thoughts. If you have any questions, please send me an email, info@hazelray.com.au. You can connect with me on Instagram, which is hazelray_frequencies. And DM me and ask me any questions about any of my experiences. I'm happy to help. I'm an open book. And also, please, if this has helped you in any way and you know someone maybe who might need to hear it or feel seen and understood or is feeling a little bit lonely, please send it to them. If you like the video, please press the like button, and make sure that you've got your notifications set on so that when I release my next episode, you'll be the first to know it's there.
Until then, remember, the world doesn't need saving, people do. And if you give the people the tools to save themselves, we save the world. I'll see you next week with our 5th episode called Signs You're Awakening. And right now I'm going to leave you with my song, My Demon, that is about the very nights that I just described and the lessons that I learned from it. I hope you enjoy.
I see you standing there with your yellow eyes, real dark face and no heart inside. You crawled inside my head and you torment me. You lurk within the dark, wake me from my sleep. Horns that point deep within my soul. taken me places that no one should ever go or know. What I've seen inside my head is because of you, and the pain that you have caused has got to go. You're my demon that I fear. You're my demon that I must hear. You're my demon that's caged my soul. You're my demon that has to go. At times in life you took my inner child. Right then and there, no more reason to smile. Then came a life with a goal to hide. So whenever I'd fall, you'd just fill me with lies. You took me to the edge where the light would be, so I could find the strength of who I'm going to be. You're my demon that I fear. You're my demon that I must hear. You're my demon that's caged my soul. You're my demon that has to go. I see you. God heals you. And without you, there's no need to hide. You're my demon that I fear. You're my demon that I must hear. You're my demon that's caged my soul. You're my demon that has to go. You're my demon that has to go. I see you standing there with your hazel eyes.